Wasn't Bob good? It's always good to listen to Bob Harrison. He brings a unique perspective and an insight just to life, and it's sometimes he says stuff and you're thinking, man, why didn't I think of that before? That's just it's pretty solid. One of the things though, it's important for us is to, as you guys are leaders here, and many of you have churches or businesses, organizations, is that we start to shift the narrative a little bit in America. The narrative right now is a little conflict and structures of bickering and fighting, which a great nation cannot survive with that level at the highest places. So we have to change the narrative of our conversations and start some unity. Division destroys a kingdom, but unity and love is the foundation. And so I wanted to start with these guys, and just guys in the California sense. Tell us, I want to demystify a little bit from your position and just kind of talk to us about who you are. Tell how long you've been married, do you have any children? Give us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, and we'll just kind of walk down and then answer some questions.
I'm Tracy Buxton. You guys are so sweet. I've been married just this last week, 36 years. We celebrated our anniversary this week, a couple days ago. And 4 kids are all young adults, fabulous human beings. I'm proud of each and every one of them, 3 boys and then a girl. Been involved in community service all my life, just about every kind of form I can think of, and this position that I'm in now as a council member for the city of Des Moines is just an extension of that. It's another form of community service. I feel like I'm giving my life to my community right now.
Well, I'm Joe Fain. I represent just a little bit east of here and north of here in the Washington State Senate. My wife and I have been married will be 8 years in December. We've got 3 little ones. The youngest is turned 4 months today. The middle is 2.5 and is currently sitting on a small plastic toilet where he has spent probably about 14 hours on that toilet yesterday. We read the same book about a dozen times. If he goes to the bathroom on the little toilet, he gets a puff, he gets to flush the toilet, and he goes and he gets to watch Cars 3. So that's what's going on in my life right now. And my oldest is 4. Her name is Waffles, and she is a Schnauzer Yorkie and is my darling little dog. So, who took literally no time at all to potty train, by the way. We are using the pee pads that a friend gave me to potty train my dog to have my son sit on while watching TV because he just wets himself. So.
Good morning.
Didn't realize this was a comedy show.
My name is Jesse Johnson, and first and foremost, my beautiful wife, Epiphany, is here. And thanks be to her for being here and for God for bringing her into my life. And we got married a month ago, actually, so we're newlyweds.
Tiffany, I want you to stand up so we can see you. Congratulations. All right.
And we don't have any kids yet, but we do have a 1-year-old Boston Terrier named Boss. So he definitely keeps us busy. First and foremost, again, I'm a Federal Way kid, grew up here in Federal Way. We're in the area. And, I'm an educator. I work in Highline Public Schools, and I'm also a city council member in Federal Way, and I'm just really blessed to be in this position. I'm actually the youngest ever city council member in Federal Way, so I'm really proud to say that because I try to represent the youth to the best of my ability every single day. So.
Good morning. My name is Andy Wong. Glad to be with all of you this morning. I've been a police officer for 30 years, and just shy of 5 years. Oh, thank you. Just shy of 5 years as a police chief for Federal Way. I've been here almost 23 years with Federal Way, and I was a police officer with the Olympia Police Department before coming to Federal Way. Ever since I was a small child, I always wanted to be a police officer. So when I got into high school, I was a police explorer. When I was in college at St. Martin's down in Lacey, I was a police cadet, and I was very fortunate enough to get hired down in Olympia. So I've been very blessed to have this long career in a job that I just absolutely love to do. I'm married. I've been married to my wife for about 15 years, and we have two children, 10 and 8, and we live in Federal Way. So, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Gordon Goodsell, and I'm your fire marshal here in Federal Way. And thank you. Like Chief Wong, I got started really early. I started with the Federal Way Fire Department before we came South King Fire and Rescue when I was 21. So you can tell that's been quite a while. And my wife, Linda, and I, we live up at Lake Tapps, and we're coming up on 30 years of marriage. And we worship and serve at Lake Tapps Community Church. We have 2 adult sons that are 26 and 24. My older son is a Tacoma firefighter paramedic, and my younger son is serving in the Army in South Korea.
I'm supposed to tell you you could text questions to a website, and I don't know what it is. So tell me. Email at social. Get a.
Up on the screen.
Okay, there we go. social@overcomercc.org. You can email a question there if it's a good question and we have a chance to get to it. We'll certainly address that. And if you're watching online, you can certainly do that as well. Thank you. I want to talk just a little bit to you guys about your faith and how that impacts your public service. You know, is it easy to do what you're doing in this environment? Is it the challenges that you're facing consistently? Certainly, you have to make some good decisions and some righteous decisions. How does your faith in anything, whatever your faith is, impact your governmental positions? Anybody can pick it up.
Well, I feel that Pastor Derzet once said, if you only say yes to the things that you know for sure that you can do, that's all you're ever going to get is what you are. But if you say yes to the things that you know are impossible, that leaves lots of openings for God to come in and do the rest. And I feel like I operate all my day when I said yes to this, and when I say yes to whatever, I have lots of yeses, just like we just heard. I feel like I lean on God for all the blank spaces. I am so aware of my blank spaces and my inability to do certain things. And so I feel like my faith in God to fill in the blanks for me.
Yep. Helps carry you. Kind of fills in some of the gaps. Anybody else?
Okay, I'll go next here. You know, my parents were immigrants from Korea. We had a very modest beginning, but really hard work ethic. They showed us that. I can tell you that without God's direction and steering in my life, I know that I wouldn't be here today. It's because God's blessing that I get to do what I love to do every day. I would tell you that for me, I pray with my children every morning before they go to school. And I know my wife does that with our kids when they come home. And before I make major decisions, I pray about the decision to make. I always make decisions what I believe are best for the organization. And I think it's served me well in my leadership position. I've been in either executive, management, or supervisor position for 22 years. And I think praying and God giving me direction has played a huge role in who I am today and the decisions that I make.
I would echo the chief's sentiment. Our community supports the fire department very well, and they support and enable us to help people in the way that is in line with my faith, and we certainly try to do the right thing, and we're given the resources to help people in their time of need, and so it's rather seamless for me when I come to work. I feel like I'm working on a mission.
You know, and given that, you know, certainly there's challenges and issues that we all face individually, but we also face a lot of things just from a corporate standpoint. And so, how would you? First of all, let me do this. Describe maybe a challenge or two that you've observed that our community is faced with that we really need to come with a solution. Go ahead.
Well, I'll start off, and it's not a problem. I think you alluded to it a little bit earlier. It's not a problem that is like, you know, homelessness or poverty or education. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things we need to do on all those issues, but we've lost the core. We've lost the ability to deal with those issues. We've lost the ability to talk to one another, the ability to see differences in opinion and respect them, the desire in our own hearts to find truth that might be different than the truth that we know. And that's the challenge of our time right there. And so as I look and I try to, you know, through my position and through my daily walk, constantly trying to bring myself out of my own perspective, trying to take myself out of my own shoes and listen to the hearts and the words of other people, especially those that disagree with me, and the problems that continues to confront me in every step along the way is a lot of people that, because of media, because of other the words of other leaders, because of, you know, fear, because of whatever their life situation is, they have shut down, and they are not able to hear those words. They're not able to experience and think about things differently. And if we can't break through that, then none of these other key problems that any of us might talk about today can ever be solved.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so and I agree with that. So we got to figure out a way, at least getting started, to break through that, because we see this solution, and sometimes you have a solution, or you are a solution, but you're waiting for somebody else to provide the solution when God has made you the answer to that. I really love what Bob was talking about. The 7 no's were lost their power with the 1 yes. Sometimes it's just the one person that acts and does what is right that nullifies a lot of the situation that happens in our community. And anybody could give me a recommendation. If somebody could say, listen, if we just as people would do this, it would make a difference. And let me give you one for me. When I got here to Washington coming from Texas, and the speed limit in Texas is 70 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour. And then I got pulled over for going I was going 72, but I got pulled over, and the guy said, do you know how fast you were going? And I said, 70. And he said, yes, you were going 72. And I said, okay. And he said, you know what speed limit is? I said, 70? He said, no, it's 60. I said, on the highway? He said, where are you from? I said, Texas. He said, well, it's 60 here. Gave me a nice reminder with a ticket. And so, but I had to change my behavior. I had a behavior that was going 75 plus, and I had to change my behavior, or else I wasn't going to make it. And so I ultimately did. I didn't change it right away, but I broke it to change it. So I'm just telling you, we can make changes in our personal life that will influence changes in the environment. So give me any suggestions to what Senator Fain says that we could possibly do to flip the civility, the unity, and bring unity back into the atmosphere. Anybody have any ideas?
One thing I would say is, you know, a lot of times we talk about involving the community or engaging the community, but I'm a true believer that you have to stand in solidarity first. And I think a lot of times we don't stand in solidarity with our most marginalized community. And so when you see someone out on the street, like you mentioned, someone experiencing homelessness, a young person that's in need, how do you stand in solidarity with them? And it starts with empathy, and you have to really be able to empathize with that person. I had an opportunity to talk with a mom a few days ago, and one of her kids doing really well in school, middle school, 3.8 GPA, but the issue is not feeling connected to what he's learning. And with that, after school, he's getting into the wrong crowd, getting into the wrong things, and she asked the principal, how can I help my kid? What can you do for my kid? And the principal said, well, they're doing great. They have all A's. They're doing, they're in after school, some programs. They're missing some programs, but they're involved. And the mom said, I'm not going to be able to say that on his obituary. And that's a powerful statement, because sometimes we get caught up in thinking of the high level, systems and trying to bring kids along but then the immediate needs of that kid or that person, how can we solve some of those immediate needs and really empathize with that person in that moment? So that really struck me when I heard that.
I think regardless of our background, our heritage, I think people all want the same thing. We want our kids to do well, get a good education. We all want safety. You can define safety in a lot of different ways, but we want to live in a safe society. So I'm going to look at kind of a glass half full, meaning there's a lot of things we need to work on in this country, in our state, and there's some division. But I think with all that being said, I still think we live in a great country where overall, we're safe. You can go where you want, and you're free to go where you want, and you're safe. And we have a great education system. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But just look around the world and the level of quality that we live in. We just need to fine tune. We just need to have that shared vision as a nation, where everybody's moving in the same direction. And this is the communication part. I know there's people are thinking like glass is half full. We got to get past that. And what are the commonalities that we have and share that we can all move forward in a positive direction, whether it's federal way, state, nation?
Follow the principle thing. Start small and grow big. That's the kingdom of God is like that. But it's like a seed. You take an apple seed, it's only going to produce based on the nature of the seed. So an apple seed is not going to produce peaches. And not only is it so specific, it'll produce a specific variety. So a Fuji seed will produce a Fuji tree, which will produce a Fuji apple, which will produce an innumerable amount of seeds to reproduce. Fuji apples. It won't produce anything else. And so it's important for us to connect and transform the atmosphere by our single seed. And if you're saying to yourself, listen, I'm just one person, what can I do? Well, you can find out the action items that need to go on to create a positive environment, to bless somebody, to make a difference for them, and then do it. Just start doing what you do, because somebody watching you, there's somebody, I promise you, watching you. And when they see you do it, they'll do it. But they may not be courageous enough to break through the ice for the first time. But if you'll break through, you empower them to break through. Change happens from the outside. Transformation happens from the inside. And so to be a transformational leader, you have to change from the inside out. And people will watch you, and then they'll change. Their hearts will change. Give us some of the other challenges or anything else that you're thinking of that are in our community we could respond to.
I think one of the biggest things that people in leadership anywhere, whether it's government or otherwise, face today is social media, and we're all on it. And I would challenge us all to take that as an incredibly powerful tool called the Word, whether it's spoken or written. I think the glass is half full. There's always at least a couple of truths to every situation, and you get to pick the one you want to talk about. I could talk about my upbringing from all the negative things, and you would be horrified at my upbringing. But if I only picked all the positive things, you would wish that you would have been me. So I would challenge all of us when you see horrid things sometimes being put out there. We, all of us, have the power to step in and break negativity, break lies.
You know, the balance of right foot, left foot. You know, as a pastor, sometimes somebody will come for counseling or marriage counseling, and the wife couldn't make it, so the guy is there, and he'll share his side of the deal, and you're like, yo, you're married to the worst woman ever. You know, then he'll leave, and she'll come in, and she'll tell her story, and you're going, oh, yeah. Oh, really? That changes everything. I'm just telling you what, there's a perspective that we have to keep when you're watching social media, when you're listening to the news, because every bit of information you're getting, if you're not getting direct, it's hearsay, and it's tainted. And so we have to be at least smart enough to know, let me find a balance in this, truth in that. How do we do that? Is there something you guys do that makes sense?
Well, it was just, you were reminding me of something that I was talking about the other day. Usually when I'm in a group like this and folks are asking this kind of, what is your advice for forwarding civility? How do we fix our broken politic? I always start by saying, stop watching cable news. But like any good politician, I didn't follow my own advice, and I was watching CNN the other night. And Ben Sasse was talking, and Ben Sasse is a senator from Nebraska, and he was pitching his new book, and it's about political tribalism. And it was really interesting and kind of really fit in line with what the two of you were just talking about, because, you know, we think of tribalism as nowadays kind of as a bad thing, but tribalism can be a really good thing, so long as you're not determining tribalism based on, national origin or ethnicity or things like that. But we do naturally create tribes in our life, which is the community that we hold around ourselves. I mean, I'm looking out at a tribe of people here who make a choice to become a part of a community here at a church or a local community, and that's really positive, that's really uplifting. But to what Tracy was saying, there is a shift away from this type of tribe to the digital tribe. And the digital tribe is being manipulated by politics at a very high level, and by corporations, and by people that want you to think a certain way, people that need you for their own power to think a certain way. And the best way to get you to think a certain way is to scare you into thinking that certain way. And so we continue to see people getting pushed further and further to the extremes, and the tribe no longer becomes the people that are sitting in this room, but the tribe becomes the voices, the anonymous voices that you line up with on Facebook and on Twitter, and the talking heads on CNN and on Fox News. And that now has replaced the tribe of community with one of anger and politics.
So we have to get involved with flesh and blood. You can't get isolated, sit at the house for hours, do Facebook or watching television program after program. We have to get involved in flesh and blood. So you just got to make a decision to do that you can't be isolated any longer. I have to get out and meet people, greet people, talk to them. Ask the Lord to tattoo on your head, talk to me. It is tattooed on my head in invisible ink. And people, unbelievable, will come up and tell me stuff. I'm at the grocery store. A guy will come up, start talking, and invariably, and halfway through the conversation, he'll say, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. I don't even know you. And they'll continue on. But, So, because he's looking for a solution. And so we have to be that kind of solution.
Absolutely, and I would just add on, connecting with people at a humane level, and it comes through your actions, not just your words. My dad always used to tell me, show me, don't tell me. And, I think for me, us as politicians, sometimes a lot of our work is transactional, but to get to that transformational work that you're talking about, it starts with connecting with people at a humane level on their own humanity. I really love what Dr. Harrison talked about with that spirit of favor. And I think when I'm out in community, I'm trying to show that, and I'm showing that through my actions. And so whether it's going out to ask people what is their living conditions, how are they living every day, how are they surviving, because you don't know someone's story until you ask them and you connect with them at that heart level. And so I think if we can do a little bit more of that every single day, then we're going to be going towards progress as a community, and not just individuals, but as an entire community.
You know, I think it's also important for us to realize that you have to connect to people where they are, not where you are. So if they're on an FM receiver, you cannot send a signal on AM. Well, I'm going to send it really loud. You're not hearing me. Well, you can send it as loud as you want, but they're not connected to that signal. They're in a different bandwidth. So we have to connect to people based on where they are. And let me just encourage all of us that it costs us something to do that. It costs patience. It costs some understanding. You might have to sacrifice a little bit. And the guy really doesn't get it. And it's okay, because love will ultimately overcome the challenges. We've talked in the back, Gordy, a little bit about homelessness and some of the things. That's a little bit of an epidemic here in, well, really in our whole nation, but certainly here in Washington State. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen and how you've been able to address some things there.
Sure. Maybe I could talk about the challenges that we're facing in our community, in our nation, from a law enforcement perspective. And I would tell you that dependency on drugs, the drug usage, is a huge problem facing our society today. I could tell you in the Federal Way Police Department, 8 to 9 out of the crimes that we read, it's all drug related. So if there's elected officials here at the state level, national level, and there's things that we're doing now to turn off the faucet, but the pharmaceutical companies, in the name of profit, has really gotten our country addicted to the opioid issue. It's creating the homeless issue problem, the crime issues. So I know a lot of times policy people look at us and say, what can we do to reduce crime? But we're at the extreme end. When police are dealing with things, we're at the extreme end of things, of social issues, and they look to us to solve the problem. But if we can do things up front. So drug issue is a huge problem. We can pray about it, but we got to take action. And I know there's a lot of things going on now, drug treatment and so forth. So that's one huge issue that we're facing in our society from a law enforcement perspective. And we can reduce crime by addressing that. And it has nothing to do with the police department, right? Because when crimes occur, the public expectation is if there's a homicide, they want us to make an arrest. But that's at the very extreme end. Second thing is our kids are exposed to so much violence today, whether it's movies, music, guns, and our youth, not always youth, but they resort to violence to address issues, whether it increase in road rage, what have you. So we need to address that. Video games. My kids will not play violent video games, period. But I think what kids are exposed to today is a huge problem. And then third thing that we need to do is just help families in general, because so many kids are growing up with lack of role models, mentors. They're not getting the right support at home, and that's the extreme end that the police deals with all the time. So those are just macro issues that I'm talking about, but those are huge challenges that are impacting our society. But homelessness right now, what we're seeing is, 8 or 9 of the homeless people are dealing with some sort of addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and we need to obviously turn the corner on that. And if I was smarter, I would have been a firefighter, because they have no issues. Everybody loves, that's why he's not talking, because they don't put handcuffs on anyone. They just go there and help. So who could complain about that? But if I would have done better on my civil service exam, I would be sitting here.
I went to a conference one time, and the room was in danger of being overcrowded. And as fire marshal, it was my job to make sure that we enforce the law. And one of Andy's police officers came up to me and he said, "You know, you're the only firefighter people don't like." So I do get a taste of law enforcement to a certain extent. But I would kind of talk a little bit about families like you did, and that when a call comes in, whether you're in the police department or the fire department, or you're working in the front office of the church, you want to respond. There's an emergency, and we should be prepared to respond. But before that call comes in, we need to work to prevent the problem to begin with. And I think one of the main things I would want to say is I want to affirm what you're doing here as a church and how important it is in the community to build strong families. Because when we look down the list of the challenges that we have, I believe that a strong family can prevent almost all of those problems. And so having your doors open and welcoming people and training them and teaching Sunday school class and helping them along the way is huge. And I have some ideas about ways that we can partner to respond when we need to. But I would just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because it does make a big difference.
You know, I'm really kind of writing some things down. You know, one of the things that we could do, just action items, and encourage each other to do the same thing, is there is a tremendous amount of violence on video games, right? And I'm not looking for a show of hands, but you know, if we could just at least reduce or eliminate some of that with our own kids that are in our own house, and encourage those. And you're going to get some pushback, obviously. I mean, the kids love these games, and it's just a game, but it does create certain mindsets. I was sitting with a couple kids, and they were watching this little program, and it's like virtual reality type. I don't know, they called it something else. And there was a guy with a gun. They were shooting, and then the guy shoots, and he it's blank, 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 blank. Then finally, he shoots, and he falls, and he gets shot. And they laughed, and that wasn't my response. It was a little horrific for me, and they were laughing because they had been desensitized to that reality, right? And not bad kids, they just been desensitized by seeing it over and over again. And so we have to take a little bit of action and encourage that in our own homes by kind of look through and see what Xbox video games that the kids have that may not be ready for at their age.
I think this brings up a really important issue about what does it mean for something to be legal or illegal? And does that have any bearing on whether it's moral or right or good for our community? You know, we live in a pluralistic society. We live in a society that has a strong First Amendment protection to speech and expression and to have a violent video game. And sometimes, as we adopt a more statist view of the world, maybe is one way of putting it, we start to assume that the values that are in our law are the values that we should have in our heart. And that's not how it works. That's not how it works in a that's not how it's supposed to work in a pluralistic society. In a pluralistic society, in a society of liberty, you have the ability to do a lot of things. You have the ability to make a lot of mistakes. But you also have the responsibility to make those choices that you think are going to be right for you and for your community, and to not always rely on the law to tell you what's right and wrong, because it does a really crummy job of that.
You know, I think that's a great point, because a lot of times the law is sort of like a guide. It's a compass. It's not the end all. And I think that, again, how do we teach our young folks what right and wrong is? Last summer when I was at a camp for youth, a fight broke out. It was at the Teen Center in Federal Way. And one of the guys that I know pretty well that was a camp leader told the kid that wanted to retaliate, hey, you know, I want to see you on Monday. You know, I don't want you to get into a situation where you can't get out of it. And that's the reality of today. It's not just fist fights anymore. Kids are carrying weapons. And so how do we de-escalate situations and explain the urgency and the sense of reality to our kids? And I think that that starts right here, trying to develop our young leaders, because a lot of times the messenger is just as important as the message. And, I know from experience, my first job at a college was at Garfield High School as a teacher's assistant. And I went into a 9th grade class, and it was chaos. And the teacher asked me to come up into the front of the class and try to de-escalate the classroom. At 21 years old, I'm like 3 years older than the kids, and try to get it under control. And then pretty soon, I was doing that for all the classrooms. And so young folks have a lot of influence on each other. And so that messenger, if we can get our young folks to be the messengers for some of the messages that we're saying, that would go a long ways.
They will listen to each other. People have a tendency to connect to something or somebody that looks like and acts like you. That's huge. Tell us a little bit as we're winding down about things in the community that are important to you guys. A charity or an event or something you guys support that we could, as a faith-based community, can get behind.
One of my greatest passions is battling this trafficking industry that we have here. According to some statistics, Seattle is, I think, 3rd in the country, 6th in the world for trafficking. That's according to some statistics. And we have this corridor right here, Highway 99, that runs through all these communities: Seattle, Tukwila, Kent, SeaTac, Des Moines, Federal Way, and I am very passionate about supporting any organization that helps women and children get out of the life, and also, no industry is going to go under and be destroyed if it still has a consumer. And so I think the greatest part, you can burn down a QFC, but that's not going to stop QFC from selling groceries. But if you tell people if you can get people not to shop there, so I think half the battle is rescuing women and kids, but the other half is really destroying the appetite. So.
I would say a huge issue is, or not an issue, but an opportunity is engagement of our community and our residents, specifically voter engagement and awareness around the issues. Like we talked about, there's a lot of divisiveness and turmoil in our politics nationwide, and so people get turned off by that. And so I think that we still can't ignore it. We have to be engaged and know the issues. I always think about what Dr. King said. He said, have your Bible in your right hand and the newspaper in your left hand. And so we have to be engaged with the issues, but in doing that, I think as a church and as a congregation, we know what truth is, right? We know what truth is first, but we still want to make sure that we're knowing what the issues are in our community, because they interconnect. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do as elected officials is walk alongside our churches and our church leaders, not in silos, because so much of our work does interconnect in the community. But I do think that we have to make sure that our residents know what the issues are and have a voice.
Well, before I tell you the organizations that I'm involved with to make a positive difference, I want to just give you a safety tip for the day, because I know we're talking about crime, and if you follow social media, you think the world's going to come to an end tomorrow. But I'm going to tell you that the most dangerous thing for you and your family is really traffic related. So if you are driving and you're using your phone, you need to really stop doing that. Educate your kids to stop doing that, because by far, for an average citizen, your chances of getting hurt or killed in a traffic accident is so much higher. Yet it's not sexy enough, so you don't see it in the news as much, right? I mean, you got to have shooting or something before it makes news. So I would just tell you that traffic safety is the biggest threat for you. And for Federal Way Police Department, and it repeats in every community across this country, your second biggest threat is people that you know, domestic violence. So we need to bring awareness to that issue. But I wanted to just kind of say that so that if you took away one thing from a police officer today is wear your seatbelt, follow the rules of the road, and don't text and drive. Our cars are made... our cars are made safer today. You know, they can withstand more force in an accident. And over the years, our fatality rates in this country have gone down from 50,000 to down to 35,000. And introduction of smartphones is now, even with the cars being made safer, is just, it's on an incline. And it's hard to stop it because it's like an addiction, isn't it, on that phone? But I'll tell you what, when you're driving, there's nothing, when you get into that bad accident, you hurt someone or yourself, obviously you're going to regret it. But I would just tell you that if there's one thing that could change your life is stop using that smartphone. It's not that important in what you do. And as far as, you know, my involvement, obviously I'm very active. My family's very active at our church. I'm involved with a multi-service center. I serve as a table captain, and I attend a variety of different community fundraising events. But one of the things I do to help around the world is I'm involved with Good Shepherd Mission. So my entire family, not just me, but my brother, my sister, we help out in that way because there's so much need even beyond, you know, this country. In fact, you know, we have a lot of resource here in this country, but there's a lot of people suffering and dying throughout the world. So that's my contribution, and I see myself being involved in that regardless whether I'm involved in police work or not.
Just a quick little factoid on what Andy was talking about. It is not illegal in the state of Texas to use your smartphone while driving, but it is illegal in the state of Washington to do that. So
That's why I never do that. I never.
You know, we all know what we're capable of giving, and a lot of times that's money. A lot of times that's prayer. A lot of times that's a kind word. Sometimes that's time. And probably the most valuable of all of those that can be given is time. And so the things that I really am passionate about getting members of the community engaged in are those things that involve the intersection of responsible adults, their time, and kids that need help. And one of the things that's most, that I've seen some of the biggest benefits from is an organization called Communities in Schools, and we've got one throughout South King County. We've got these programs, but really any program, you know, Big Brothers Big Sisters and mentorship programs. Anytime that you can take yourself out of your day and give it to a young person, not in a passing sort of way, but in a really deep connection where they feel as though they have someone to trust, someone to turn to, someone to guide them, someone to bounce ideas off. Maybe it's not because they come from some, you know, broken home or what we would typically associate as being an at-risk young person, but we all know, even from our own kids, that there are things that that kids don't talk about with their own parents, and that maybe talking with their own peer group isn't exactly what you want them talking to on these things. And so there's just a host of opportunities to mentor and to help young people in their journey through life. And if you have the time to do that, there is a program that is perfectly tailored to fit the amount of time that you have to give. And if you ever need help connecting with those programs or knowing what they're like, you just please contact me, because I love nothing more than connecting people like you with the young people in our community.
I would love to add on to that, and again, talking about prevention and young folks, you know, I think for me, it's really just seeing who is the most marginalized group. And I think that I'm a fan of a concept by Dr. John Powell from UC Berkeley called targeted universalism. And that's that if you help the folks that are at the bottom that need the most support, everyone else will benefit going up. And so when you look at our area in Kent and Federal Way, we have the number 1 and 2 highest referrals to the juvenile system in the state of Washington, in Kent and Federal Way. And so what that means is we have a lot of preventative work to do, investing in our youth programs. I sit on the board of the Federal Way Youth Action Team, and we need folks in there, mentors, but we also need our government investing in them. And so from a city level, a state level, and I think churches can advocate for that because you see it. And churches see the needs of our youth every single day. And so I think as an entire community coming together to advocate for our youth would go a long ways.
There are a couple of issues that the fire department faces in terms of education that we would welcome the support and the partnership of the church on, and that is smoke alarms and learning CPR. And with smoke alarms, it's particularly challenging because we speak a lot about smoke alarms. You hear it on the news all the time, and from my perspective, I think who could possibly not know that they need a smoke alarm? But we do have calls where people lose their lives because, in part, because they don't have that very inexpensive smoke alarm that we would provide and come and install for them for free if they would just be willing. And so the church has a couple of opportunities to come along and alongside of us and partner us on that. One of them being that I'm sure at some level the church is helping people with housing. And so if you're helping somebody with rent or you're putting them in a motel room, if you have an opportunity when you're there to check and make sure they have a smoke alarm, that could make a huge difference. Maybe you're just visiting them or bringing a meal, but if that were put on a checklist and you were there in the home and you noticed that they didn't have it, if you let us know, or we could supply you with smoke alarms so that we could give you some basic training, you could just install them. And so that is an opportunity that you have that we don't necessarily have. So that would be a great thing. If you wanted to canvass a neighborhood that was at risk for not having smoke alarms, we could participate with you in that. Now, shifting gears to CPR is another opportunity. CPR has been greatly simplified in that there's a hands-only technique now. And the reason why our area has such high survivability for CPR is because you're out there in the community and many of you are trained in it. So they get that early CPR really helps. And so we could partner in providing training. You could do it here at the church. We could have a special event at the mall, and it would be a way for the church to get out in the community and show that concern.
That's good. So outstanding. We saved the best for last, Gordy. Appreciate that. That was quality stuff. We got action items. And so what's important for us to take the information that we've received and then do something with it and get involved. Get involved back at the house with your own kids. Get involved with the kids' kids. My son Jeremiah, sometimes he tells me this all the time. We're in the car going to school, and he's giving me what he wants to do after school. And he says, I'll be at so-and-so. And I'll say, who is that? They're just some friends. Dude, well, I don't know them. Well, they're my friends. Yeah, I know. But your friends are my friends. Right. Because you don't live with them. You live with me. Right. And so you got to get involved. You know, Jesse, you said about the woman who was concerned about her son. Where was his dad?
To be honest, I don't know. He wasn't present, and so wouldn't know.
Yeah. And one of the things that we have to do as men is we can't sit on the sidelines. And sometimes you go to have a hard day at work, you work 8, 9, 10 hours in traffic and doing stuff, and then you come back and you just want to just chill. Well, you can chill, but you got to get involved with what your kids are doing. And not only get involved in their world, but help them get involved in their friends' worlds. And it's unbelievable the difference that just one guy, one voice can make in our society. We appreciate you guys, and I certainly appreciate this panel of distinguished men and women.